Hello friends, in this video tutorial I'm going to talk about the different CSS selectors. So the best way to learn the different CSS selectors is from the w3cschools.com. So let's go on the website. The first CSS selector which I'm going to talk about is the class selector. So let's click on this. So what is a class selector? Basically, any HTML element you can assign different class, and an HTML element can have a class attribute with a value, and in this case we are having a div element having a class attribute with a value intro. So if you want to style the div element, the class selector is referenced in the style tag with a period followed by the class name, that is in this case it is intro. So all the elements within the div will be having its background color changed to yellow. So in this case both the elements, that is paragraph 1 and the second paragraph, will have the background color changed to yellow. So you can have multiple class with the same value. So for in this example I'm going to assign this p tag as with the same class, that is intro. Let's see what would be the result. So as you can see, you can have multiple HTML elements having the same class. So we can even assign an HTML element multiple classes. For example, let's say we are going to create a class called my class, and now we are going to define the style for my class. So how to define it is put a period and the name of the class, that is my class, and the braces. In this case I'm going to define the text color as, let's say, red. So the elements which will be having the name class, the name my class, will have their text color changed to red. So this is a very simple CSS selector. So let's see the next one, that is the ID selector. Like the class selector, ID selector is a bit different. In any HTML page you can't have multiple IDs with the same value. So for in this case we are having an ID assigned over here called first name. So this ID needs to be unique. So any element having the ID first name will have its background color changed to yellow. So in this case we have the element P, which is having an ID first name, which has assigned this color to yellow. So technically you can't assign the two different elements same ID. Even if you try to assign it, you might get the same style, but if you try to reference it through JavaScript, you will get an undefined behavior. For example, if I try to give this ID same over the next P element, it will probably going to create its background color same as that the upper paragraph. But this is not a good practice. Don't use multiple IDs in the same page, otherwise you are going to have an undefined behavior, especially during the JavaScript. So the next CSS selector is the global selector. This is very simple selector. All it does, it selects all the elements within the body tag. So starting from the body tag, entire elements which are within the body tag will have this effect. So For in this example, um, all the elements within the body tag will have its background color set to yellow along with the body tag as well. So let's try change and see the text color. So the color for this over here is, let's say, red. So in this case, all the elements, that is both the paragraph as well as the outer paragraph, will have its color set to red. So the next selector, that is an individual element selector. So in this type of selector, you name the element for selecting to style it. So in this case, we are having element P, and all the P element which are there within the body tag will have this effect. So no matter where they are, but within the body tag, no matter how deeply nested they are, for example in this case, this P element is within the div and this div is within the body, whereas over here this P element is within the body outside, not like this P element which is inside the div element. So no matter where the P element is within the body, it will have this effect. Let's say you have a span element, and you want to change the color, the text color for the span element. So no matter where the span element is within the body, its effect will be felt. So let's copy this and let's put inside the div element. So no matter where it is within the body tag, uh, it will apply the style for the respective elements. So in this case, which is element P and element span. Let's take the another example, that is the next selector, that is the multiple element selector separated by commas. Essentially it is the same as this, but the only difference is if you want to style different elements with the same, having the same style. Let's take an example. So in this case, you are having an h1 element, that is the header one, you want to set the header as well as the paragraph both to yellow color. So you could do this by writing two separate styles. In this case, this would have the same effect, and to reduce the time and typing, you can just put a comma and include the element which you want to style having the same style, and it will have the same effect. So you can chain n number of elements. So if you want some different span element, you can also do that, and just it will have the same effect. So the next element, the next CSS selector, what we are going to see is an element inside an element. So what this CSS selector says is every P element within the div element anywhere. So this P element anywhere between the div element. So in this case, we are having a div element over here, and within this div element we are having a paragraph P element over here. So no matter where it is, but it should be within the div element. No matter how deeply nested this p element is, it will have the style effect applied to on it. Let's take an example. Let's say we create a span element and create a paragraph element within it. So no matter how deeply the p element is nested within the div element, this style will be applied. The only condition is that p element, that is this element, should be within this div element anywhere, but it should be within that. No matter how deeply this p element is nested, it will have this CSS style applied on it. In this, whereas in this case, this p element is not nested within a div element. So that is the reason why this p element is not getting this style applied, because its parent element is body, and there is nowhere between the body, a div element between this p element. So let's say if we create a div element over here, now what is happening is this p element is getting nested within this div element. So essentially it this is going to apply the style on this p element as well. So even if I create another span element outside this p element, it will still have the same effect. So the condition for this styling is this element will get styled if and only if this element is included within this div element anywhere, how deeply nested it might be. In this case, the div element is this outermost, and then you have span, and then inside that you have a paragraph. So yes, let's take the next CSS selector. That is element within an element, but having the parent as element 1. So what this CSS selector does is it selects the p element but within the div element. Now the condition over here is the div element should be the parent of the p element. So you might wonder what would be the difference between the previous one and this one. The difference is, although this p element sorry although this p element is within this div element, but it is having a parent in between, which is a span. So the condition over here is the p element should have a div element as a parent immediately. So in this case, there is a span element over here and then a div element. That is the reason why this p element over here is not getting styled, whereas in this case this p element is having its parent element as div. So this paragraph element is getting styled. What would happen if I remove the span is it is going to have this style applied on this as well. So let's remove this and see. So as you can see, now this, since this p element is within this div element, this style is getting applied. Whereas if I create another element outside this, this style will not be applied. And also note that it need not be only one element, you can have multiple elements. So let's see the result. So no matter how many p elements are there within the div, but if its parents is a div, then the style will be applied. But if I create another element outside this p element, this will not be applied. So what would happen if had we just instead of this greater than symbol, had we had just a space, the style would have been applied. The reason is now this p element is within the div element, and although this is also a parent of this p element, but in this case, that is the greater than, the p should have an immediate parent as a div. In this case, only this para has this condition, so it is getting this style applied. That is the difference between the previous one and this one. So let's see the next CSS selector, that is so in such type of CSS selector, that is div plus p, what this says is the paragraph element immediately after the div elements. So in this case you are having a div element which starts over here and ends over here. You need not see anything within the div element, ignore it. Where it gets over, immediately after that, if it has a p element, then it will be styled to yellow. In this case, this p element is immediately after the finishing of this div element, so it is having this color as background color as yellow. What would happen if I insert another tag in between which is not a paragraph element? Its effect will not be felt, even though this p element is after the div element, but it is not immediate element after the div element. Its effect will not be felt. So the most important condition is it should be immediately after the div element. So if I remove this, then yes, you are going to see the effect. And the second thing you need to know is it will only style the first element. Even though we are having immediately after this p we are having another paragraph element, this will not be styled. Only the first one will be styled. In this condition, this paragraph, that is my best friend is Mikey. So that is the difference. Let's take the another CSS selector. So what this CSS selector does is it selects all the UL elements after the P elements. Okay, but the condition is the parent of UL and the parent of the P should be the same. Okay, so let's see this example. In this example, you can see you have a UL element over here. It starts over here, gets over here, but and then you also have a UL element over here. In both the cases, the UL element over here does not has the paragraph element before it, so this condition is not getting applied on this UL element, because it says it should, the P element should precede the UL element. So although you have a UL element over here, before this UL element you have a division element and a body element. You don't have any paragraph element over here, so this style will not be applied to this UL element. Let's check the another UL element which is over here. This is UL element. Yes. Is it preceded by a paragraph element? Yes, it is preceded by a paragraph element. And let's take the another one, that is another UL element is over here. Is it preceded by the paragraph element? Yes, it is preceded by the paragraph element. So this style is going to get applied on both this UL element, this one and this one, which you can see, that is over here and over here. It is not necessary that the UL element should immediately follow after the P element. Even if you have a span element over here, it will still work, but the condition is it should be after the P element, that is it should be, this UL element should be after the P element anywhere. And the second condition is both the UL elements over here, they should have the same parent. In this case they are having the same parent, which is essentially the body over here, that is over here. What would happen if I insert a div element over here? That is, I have inserted a div element before the P and after the UL. So this P, this entire thing is getting nested within this division element. Now although this UL element is is after the P element, but the parent of the P element in this case becomes both this div, whereas in this case the parent of this UL element is essentially the body tag. So you see over here the result is only getting applied to the middle UL element and not the outer one. The reason is now this UL element is having a different parent, although it is preceded by a paragraph element over here, but since the parent for this paragraph element is this outer div, which is not the same parent for this UL element, the style is not getting applied. If we remove this, then you will see they both will have the style applied. Thank you for watching the video. In next tutorial I'm going to continue with the next CSS selectors. Thank you.